For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for its analysis of USC's 2021 Pro Day, at least the interview portion of Pro Day. And that was on Monday. We'll actually get to see some of it on Wednesday. But Shotgun, we got a full bevy of interviews. It was basically 3 hours of interviews with USC 7 draft eligible players. And we got to hear from Clay Helton as well. So it was a long presser blitz, if you will. But I'm going to start with the updates we got from Clay Helton. We got to sneak in some pre-spring camp questions. And out of that, we got some roster updates and an injury update.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a long day for us. We got basketball later, so I wouldn't be surprised if some random kid that we haven't even heard of decides to commit in the middle of the day just to add on an extra layer today. No, but the biggest thing to come out of this, as far as news-wise, were the roster and injury updates. You asked about Ishmael Sopsher, saw something on their online roster and saw that he had a leg injury. Clay Helton announced that he's probably not going to be back for the spring because he had surgery for compartment leg syndrome, which you remember Mo Hassan had during the season. Michael Pittman had to have emergency surgery with the Indianapolis Colts this past year. So it's basically, a thing where there's a lot of pressure on the legs and they have to immediately have surgery to release it, or there could be some significant damage. So, that's definitely a concern. Hopefully he gets healthy and they can get him back out there because we're interested in seeing what it is. Probably the biggest update for me and you is that they probably are going to allow media. Clay Helton let the bag. I don't know if someone was like, "Well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't say that yet," because he kind of started to say it, and he's like, "Well, I think we're going to have them there." No, but it sounds like we'll be able to get out to practice, so that's good to hear. Looking forward to seeing what the team can do in person. It'd be great to see. But then we also got a couple of status updates from Clay Helton, which would be Munir McClain and Palia Naitiote, and the status update is that there's no status update. Same thing. Munir McClain is still on the roster and is still suspended from the team. Palia Naitiote is still on the roster, is in the transfer portal. He's taking classes, and Clay Helton said that they will continue to leave the door open for him as well. So no update is the update for those guys.
For sure. And Clay made it sound like we will get a spring camp update later in the week as far as what we can do. So we'll be sure to update you guys on that. But one more newsier thing, or at least update we got from Clay Helton, was about the upcoming battle for left tackle. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, he was asked about, who's going to replace Elijah Vera-Tucker, because Elijah Vera-Tucker obviously is one of the people that we talked to prior to Clay Helton. And he said they've basically got 4 candidates right now that are in the mix, and that's going to be Jalen McKenzie. He said he's got experience as a tackle already. He played right tackle for USC last year. They'll give him an opportunity. And then 3 young guys. You got Cortland Ford, who practiced a little bit at left tackle last year, but was primarily inside because they were, using him as a primary backup. So he didn't spend a ton of time at left tackle, but, they're really high on him. Jonah Monheim from Moore Park, the left tackle, played for them at left tackle. I don't know that he's got the length there that you're looking for in that position, but they really like him and what he can do out there. So he'll get an opportunity to at least try. And then Casey Collier, he's the 6'7" kid from Texas who is a pretty quiet kid. More notable in his family is probably his big sister, who's going to be the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft soon. She announced recently, last week, I believe, that she's leaving Texas early to go enter her name in the WNBA draft. But Casey Collier has apparently put on almost 30 pounds of weight. I think it is. Clay Helton said he's up to, I think it was 316. So that's a notable thing right there. He's already got, a huge frame. So if he's adding weight to it, that could be something. Got some good feet too. We'll see where he's at. And, 3 young guys that they're throwing in the mix, and we'll see if Jalen McKenzie, if he can win that out, or if they keep him at right tackle. But it's a little bit interesting to me in that is that he mentioned those 4 guys and only those 4 guys. A lot of times when Clay Helton's asked about a position battle, it's, hey Clay, who's battling for that first team reps, and then suddenly he names off 9 or 10 guys. And you go, that doesn't really answer the question at all. Where he did this time, and it's surprising because we thought maybe Andrew Voorhees would get an opportunity out there, maybe Frank Martin, he's back with the team. Is he going to get an opportunity out there? Even Liam Jimmons is a guy that, I've championed, last year as possibly making that switch. I think they're going to leave him there as well. So it's interesting that he only mentioned those young guys and Jalen McKenzie. We'll see how it shakes out when spring starts. I think that's going to be a battle that's not really resolved until early in fall camp. Actually, I think that, they'll still leave that competition open through the summer into fall camp, but I think pretty early in fall camp they'll try to make a decision and get a 5-guy rotation, on that first line that they can stick with.
Yeah, it also makes you wonder if the new addition of Clay McGuire maybe narrowed down that list from scouting or whatnot. So we'll see how the spring goes on that front. But now to what the day was about, Pro Day and USC's and NFL eligible players. I think the most interesting part, Shotgun, was hearing from Talanoa Hufanga. He had he dropped a pretty interesting flex on us, who he's been training with this offseason.
Yeah, Talanoa Hufanga is a very, very quiet kid. He actually dropped off social media like 3 or 4 years ago, and he mentioned that today. But he said, I'm not at one of the training facilities. I'm not at one of the draft combine type of places, which almost every other player is. Pretty much everyone that's preparing for an NFL combine is kind of doing that. He said, no, I'm actually just working one-on-one with someone. That someone happens to be, Hall of Famer of every level, Troy Polamalu, who is cousins with or uncle of Isaiah Polamau. So there's a family connection there, but he actually said that he was introduced to him in high school. Someone asked him and said, hey, who do you kind of model your game after? He says, I don't really model my game after anyone. I just watch certain guys. And he said, Troy Polamalu is one of the guys. And just immediately there, the connection. And this is the crazy thing about football circles is that someone's there. He's like, oh, I got you, nephew. And so, sent a text immediately and put him on a group chain with Troy Polamalu. And I think Troy's a very reserved guy. You've seen he doesn't do many appearances with USC. When he was inducted in the Hall of Fame, he's very quiet. His play is so much different than his personality off the field. Very humble, family guy. So I think Talanoa really resembles that, and he has that same type of qualities. And I think Troy Polamalu, from over the couple of years leading up to this process, got to know him and said, this guy's probably said, this guy's a lot like me. Okay. If he's looking to pick my brain and train with me, then I'll train him. And Ryan, I think, had a really interesting tweet, and it feels a little bit like, he said, it's kind of like Rocky training in the Russian winter, for Rocky IV, just getting rid of the glitz and glamour and going out and training, individually and doing that. So I think that's kind of what it is here. And to learn and be able to pick the brain of Troy Polamalu, who's a guy that we've said Talanoa Hufanga has a lot of similarities to, just in the fact that he's so versatile. You can play him at the line of scrimmage. You can play him as a linebacker. You can move him around, do different things. So I mean, I don't think you could get a better fit for if you're going to have a one-on-one trainer. I mean, you get a Hall of Famer, you get a Trojan great, but you also get a guy that is very similar. And in the last year, Talanoa Hufanga has added another similarity with the flow. He's got the flow going like Troy Polamalu as well. So, I think there's a lot of similarities there, and I think a lot of people will draw the fact the playmaking ability, and that was what we saw from Talanoa Hufanga this year. The biggest thing for him was making so many big time plays for USC to swing the momentum in games and stuff. And the biggest thing for him besides that was being healthy for all 6 games. So, Clay Helton was asked about that, what kind of concerns do teams have? And he said, I think those questions are answered because he's had the surgery, he's come back from the injury, and he's played a full season. I don't know that NFL teams necessarily completely agree with that, but I think it is a strong sentiment that, hey, he's shown, I can play this full season, even though it was a shortened season.
One of the guys we were more interested to talk to today, just because he's kind of unique out of the bunch, was Tufele. He was the guy who didn't play. He opted out of the 2020 COVID season. Shotgun, what do you have to say? I know kind of the guys and beat reporters who have known Tufele for a while noticed that he seemed a little bit different. He seemed more mature in his interview today.
Yeah, every time we talked about this, on Tunnel Vision, I believe it was, leading into Pro Day, and what do you kind of expect to see? Well, every Pro Day we kind of go and we go, oh, that guy looks way different. He's really, the training, the really focused training, he looks way different. Tufele looks different, you can't really tell on the Zoom today, but having seen his Instagram posts and different social media posts, his body, it looks a little bit different, but he sounded so much different. He just sounds like he's matured. And now a part of it, I think is because, he had a family situation. Several members of his family got COVID. His sister was in very serious condition with COVID. And this was part of the reason why he said today that he made the decision to opt out, and start training for the NFL. It was a family decision and they were going through this. So that was part of the reason. But I think that situation, that family and, a critical situation like that, it forced him to grow up a little bit. And I think that, and he said that one of the biggest things for him was once he made that decision, he realized, okay, now I'm no longer a college football player. I'm not playing college football anymore. I'm a professional. I'm an NFL football player. Even though he's not signed or drafted or anything yet, that's his profession now. I've got to act like that. And he said, I've got to train like that. He said, there's not someone telling you what to do all the time like there is in college. There's not a strength coach or anyone. They have schedules and different things with the training facilities and the agency that they work with. But you got to follow, you got to do your own thing. You got to find your own routine. He said that's one of the things he really did was he found a routine. He's been able to stick to it really well. And he said one of the biggest changes for him is doing core exercises. And I think you can see that a little bit in the Instagram posts and stuff. And I think you'll see that when he actually gets on the field, he's going to be more explosive even than he already was. And he said one of the guys, one of his coaches said, Jay, if you're not tired, you're going to make so many more plays. And so he took that to heart, and he said he's watched Aaron Donald and sees how Aaron Donald is just constantly wrecking havoc in the backfield and stuff at a defensive tackle position. And that's someone he's, taking some things away from his game. But yeah, definitely the biggest thing from Jay was seeing just the maturity in the way he was speaking, the way he was presenting himself. I'm sure he's been coached up on some of these things as well. But I think he just sounded and looked like a different guy today than what we'd seen, a year and a half ago, last time I saw him.
Mm-hmm. And he said that he's thankful that his sister was just alive today to see him do a pro day. So good update that she's doing better. He did say she's doing better. So there's the update there. But as far as Amon-ra St. Brown goes, I thought it was interesting. He's kind of the guy who, when we first saw him at that first PRP as a USC football player, he looked like a guy who could be a pro soon. And yet he said that he feels like he needs to prove things on Wednesday's pro day.
Yeah, Amon-ra St. Brown said teams have questioned his speed, even though, in quote, even though I run by guys, so, he's beaten some guys in game film and stuff. But so teams are interested to see his 40-yard dash. They're not really respecting that. He thinks he can run a 4.4. That's what he's got his mindset to. But he also said teams aren't respecting his strength, which is kind of crazy to me considering, hey, dad is Mr. Universe, John Brown. But they said, and if you've seen him block, he has some strength there. He's pancaked a couple guys out there as well, including Jack Jones in the Arizona State game. But he said he's hoping for 25 reps in the bench press. He's hoping for his vertical to be anything above a 38-inch vertical, and he's hoping for fast times on anything else. So he feels like he still has stuff to prove. You turn on the tape and you go, this guy's incredible. But teams go, he's not. He's the exact opposite of the combine warrior. But I think he's going to put up really good numbers. I think people are just kind of, sleep on him a little bit. The fact that his athleticism, his strength, all those things, I think he slept on a little bit just because he's so smooth and he runs such great routes and he's so consistent with everything he does. And teams asked him, or not teams, but he was asked about what is his best skill set. And he says, well, my competitiveness. He said, I'm more competitive than anyone. I think that comes from having three brothers, including Equanimeous St. Brown, who's in the NFL. And he said that Equanimeous has really helped him out in this process going through and just giving him the pointers as he goes through the pre-draft process, even though it's a little bit different, obviously, with the COVID. And one last thing on Amon-ra St. Brown, I thought it was interesting. He got asked questions from Los Angeles, of course, and San Francisco. There was a 49ers reporter on there. Also from Germany and from Brazil. So, he's got the international flair with the multiple languages. No one asked him questions in other languages, but, he was asked questions from several different parts of the world today.
Yeah, and he said as of German heritage, he would like to do a camp in Germany to kind of spread American football in Europe, which I thought was really cool. So that's a bonus there.
Yeah, he's hoping that in the future that there'll be, German people walking around with his NFL jersey, with the St. Brown in the back. So we'll see if that happens. I mean, there was the former NFL Europe League over there, so there's a little bit of interest there. Obviously, the other football, soccer, is much bigger in Europe and especially in Germany. So we'll see if he can gain some traction. If he becomes an All-Pro and with the type of talent that he has, then maybe that creates some extra interest over in Germany.
Sure. International sensation, Amon-ra St. Brown. We also got to talk to Elijah Vera-Tucker today. He confirmed that opting back in for the 2020 season was the right move for him. He said that it was a little weird at first playing at left tackle, but ultimately he got comfortable at that position. And now he feels like he can prove that he can play at both guard and tackle. And he said teams are scouting him at both positions as well.
Yeah, I think he's a guard at the next level. But the thing is, in the NFL, you normally carry 7 or 8 linemen in a game. So if you have an injury to a tackle, you need somebody to bump out there. And suddenly he's playing and he plays really well, then he might then keep that job, and then he earns big bucks in the future. This is something similar. I talked with Tim Drevno earlier in the year, and he said that that's something that happened with one of his Michigan offensive linemen. He said he was a guard, and then he went in the NFL, and he said, suddenly I'm watching the Patriots play on Monday Night Football or something. He said, there's this guy out there playing right tackle. And he said, that's what can happen in the NFL. So I think teams are definitely preferring him as an interior lineman. And I think he's the best interior lineman in this draft class, up there along with Wyatt Davis, the former Bosco, St. John Bosco Brave that went to Ohio State. But Elijah Vera-Tucker's got the highest marks, going to be a first-round pick. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, where he lands. So a couple of the mock drafts have had him landing with the Miami Dolphins, which would be very interesting because his good friend Austin Jackson is someone who I talked to him previously, and he mentioned it today, but is someone he's really picked his brain about the entire draft process and getting ready for it's not the combine, but their pro day experience and the combine efforts, I guess. I don't know exactly what way to put it, but preparing himself for all the tests and whatnot that you have at the pro day and you normally would have at the combine, as well as the interview process and all those other factors that normally go into it.
Well, Shotgun, I feel like we've probably made this a pseudo podcast at this point. So let's do a little bit of rapid fire. The other guys we heard from were Tyler Vaughn, Elijah Griffin, and Marlon Tuipulotu. Anything stand out from those interviews?
I mean, Tyler Vaughn saying that, he considered coming back and using that extra year of NCAA eligibility and decided, just with his age, that it's best for him to move on and try to go become a professional. That stood out to me a little bit. I didn't get to hear Elijah Griffin's. I was working on a Jay Tufele story, so you might can chime in after I finish with that one. But then Marlon Tuipulotu, it wasn't necessarily what he said. It was what other people said about him. Jay Tufele asked him, what do you think of Marlon's, stepping in for him basically and taking over, full-time duties as a defense tackle. And they said, that guy's a beast. He said, I look up to him, which is interesting. When you hear your teammates say that they look up to you, I think that kind of stands out. And then Talanoa Hufanga, I asked about those two guys because, Talanoa Hufanga, like I mentioned, hasn't been on social media in like 3 or 4 years. I previously went back at one point to find something on him on social media and found an old photo of him and Marlon in high school, and they look so different. And so I have it saved somewhere on my computer. And so I've kept that in the back of my mind. Those guys are cousins. So I asked him, playing against your family in high school, what's it been like now coming and you guys going through this process together? Now, they're not training at the same places or anything. Marlon Tuipulotu is actually training in Arizona where Elijah Vera-Tucker is at Exos, I believe. So, it's a little bit different as far as that, but they've been roommates at USC, and Marlon said that Talanoa is a really good roommate, just in case you guys were wondering. But I think just listening to what Talanoa had to say about Marlon and how he really took off this year, I thought was interesting as well. Just hearing people talk about Marlon Tuipulotu, the work he put in throughout the years. He was never the most vocal guy, but his teammates definitely noticed the work that he put in and the production that he had, especially at the beginning of this 2020 season.
Mm-hmm. As far as Elijah Griffin's interview, it's interesting. He had so much personality on the field that when it came to this interview, he was a little bit short and sweet. I did ask him what his favorite USC memory was, not that he's had time away from it. And he said that dabbing in the Coliseum, which makes sense, and his first interception. So, but he was asked, the timing of going to the NFL and that whole process and his NFL evaluation, and he was pretty vague about it. He didn't really go into any details, but he just said it felt like the right time for him to go. So that's the takeaway from his interview.
I'm going to watch that one on replay, and I feel like he's been coached up on all that if he's not being very expressive like he normally is. I think he might have been coached like, let's just keep everything short and sweet. We'll let the personality come out on Sundays when you're playing a game.
I mean, he had personality. He was like his normal OG, but he didn't expand too much on answers. It was just kind of like the short, cut, dry answers. He did thank Clay Helton, though. He said he helped him a lot in the decision process so they could get the door open whether or not he's going to return or leave. So, I mean, OG is OG. And so that was fun. And he said that NFL teams ask him about his dad when he does meetings with teams. So a little star power as well.
Are they trying to get a free concert or something? Like, hey, we draft you. Do we get, some free regulators up in here or something? I don't know.
Maybe.
And some free barbecue. That's Sniffing Griffin's barbecue.
True. Very true. All righty, Shotgun. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, I think Pro Day will be interesting on Wednesday. I won't be able to go. I think, Keely, you're going to be out there. But just to see where some of those guys are at just physically, have they taken that big jump like we've seen in the past? Is that the case? Was that just the case with Ivan Lewis as a strength coach and Aaron Osmus? We're not going to see necessarily the physical change that we've seen. And then Jay Tufele, I think, is really interesting just seeing, what he does, because he said, I'm going to do every drill. I'm out there to prove myself. He says that, he's changed his body. He's changed his mind. He wants to now show people that he hasn't been sitting on his butt. It was his quote during this entire time. He's been out there working, and he wants to show that off. So I'm curious to see the numbers he puts up and, see if he, catches some eyes as far as on social media and whatnot, because Clay Helton said that they will have all 32 teams there. All 32 NFL organizations will be represented, and that it will be televised. 2 hours of it will be televised on the NFL Network. So if you guys, you'll get to check out our coverage afterwards, but you can also watch some of it for yourself on NFL Network as well.
Mm-hmm. Also, trust the NFL Network, because that's the reason why I get to go, because they opened it to all media because of that. So at least it's a piggyback situation. That's going to wrap it up for USC's interview a day prior to Pro Day. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.